Okay, now we're recording. This is Be the Leader Live. I'm your host, Mike Cornwell, and this is the new edition of this podcast, which I'm going to start today. I've had a break between doing my podcast and getting it started because this studio that you can kind of see around me, I've got a couple different cameras, and I need to put this thing together, and it's taken me quite a long time. I mean, as we're recording this, it's June, and I think we started this project back in February, but it doesn't matter. We're going to get right into it. And so for those who are new to this podcast is all about leadership in kind of all of its different various forms. I do things on this podcast like I'm looking at taking at some calls. Now I'm actually have the ability to do that and actually take phone calls. And I've got this podcast setup that I can actually run people live here in the studio and actually record it. I'm super excited. I'm glad you're with me. And I've got kind of a quick show for you today. I wanted to get something going. Been wanting to start doing a podcast regularly. Here it is on a Monday. Normally I used to do these on Fridays, so I'll see if I can get back to doing that. And I'm not really sure what the schedule is going to be, but as things start to evolve, I'll go and, I'll let you know, and we'll once we got that schedule, we're going to stick to it. So, I first want to start with some updates. I told you about this new podcast, but as you may or may not know, I'm the founder of a leadership academy called Sanctuary Leadership, and this podcast is kind of semi-affiliated to Sanctuary Leadership. I've got, I can throw up the logo here and do things like that. But I wanted to make you aware of that. I am currently at the beginnings of launching a new course called The Leadership Awakening. And this Leadership Awakening, it's really geared for 16, maybe 19-year-olds through 29-year-olds. And of course, people above that age could take that. This Leadership Academy, sanctuaryleadership.com, it doesn't really have like some sort of age requirement, but it's really kind of geared, like my mission is to help train and develop and discover the leadership potential in our young adults. And so this course I'm super excited about, called The Leadership Awakening. It's about for the people who have this calling of leadership in whatever its form that I can actually get out to and reach to, and they're super excited about, this course is going to, jump them forward into becoming a leader. By the end of my guarantee in this course is going to be that within the first week, they will identify themselves as a leader. And the total course, it runs for 6 weeks. And I'm in the current filming of it right now. I haven't decided if I'm going to do it all in full 4K. I've got that ability. I might just do it in 1080p, 60 frames, and see how people like it, and then go from there. But with the studio that I built here, I have the ability to do it in 4K if people are interested. And I'm super excited, so I figured I'd tell you about that. Another thing is, we've got this community orchard project that we're doing here locally. And at some point in time here soon, I think I just ran an event here at my house last Friday, which of course, had I been a little bit more prepared, I could have live streamed that. That would have been kind of cool. But the event was to unveil to some of my closest friends this orchard project that I've been keeping under wraps for years now. And I'm not going to go into much detail here, but it's related to sanctuary leadership, and it's a very large and ambitious project, and we'll be looking at getting the students of sanctuary leadership out there and using their leadership skills down the road once this school comes into physical existence, which is where we're going. Once we do that and we have students, we're going to have something extremely awesome for them to work on. And so I mentioned this, not to go too far in depth, but to say, be on the lookout for this community orchard project, because you might be interested in it. Either you could see your kid coming to the Leadership Academy down the road, or maybe it's you that might be coming. And if you're interested in being able to do things like run an orchard, anywhere to produce year-round food naturally, that's kind of generally what it's all about. But that's all I really want to say about that right now. I might post the video here soon. If not, I might re-record it as kind of a personal presentation from me to you. It might make more sense because the audience is a little different, and I might have to go into more stuff or some more other videos. So stay tuned on that. So what I wanted to talk about today is kind of an introduction to parenting leadership. You may or may not have kids, and your kids may or may not be the same age as mine. I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 3.5-year-old, and an almost 2-year-old. I guess 2.5-year-old, or like 20 months or whatever. And one of the things that I have seen, I'm a very observant type of person. I love to, if there's anything that I love to do, it's to watch people, it's to listen to people and give them kind of a fair time to just really unveil themselves. And I get to watch them. And it's not, I try to avoid judgment, and I try to see, what are the strong things that they've got going on? What are some things that are different that they're doing than my wife and I are doing? These sorts of things that I might be able to pull and to glean. And it's been a very interesting thing. I've got a number of friends now with kind of all ages and parenting, and I've seen a lot of different parenting styles. I think that's the term that most people use, is parenting styles. But I don't know if I like the term styles personally. But parenting leadership is a really interesting thing. And if you don't have kids, and maybe you're thinking about getting kids, kind of listen in on this. And if you have kids, you're a parent, and you can you can feel this out. Leading your kids can be pretty difficult. And the reason is, your kids are very different than you. And most people don't know this. In fact, most people are different than you, other than the people that you kind of most easily gravitate to. Those are going to be the people who are most like you. It's just kind of how it works. And your kids are probably not like you at all. A lot of people really make the mistake of thinking that they are. And I would say I actually released a whole class on this. It's a 2-hour class on the kind of differences and similarities with people. And kind of the third thing in there is what I call the big mirror. And what the problem when you're leading your kids is you're so familiar with them that your leadership is reflected from them like a big mirror. And the problem that I mentioned in that training about a big mirror is you have a really hard time differentiating between seeing the reflection of yourself by the kind of the leadership reflection and seeing an illusion of what you think is there but isn't there. And what I mean by that is, for moments to moment, you'll be conscious of the fact that your kids are, maybe they're copying you, they're doing similar things as you, but you'll go too far and think that they are. Like you'll see their actions, and you might read more into their mimicry than it actually is. For sure, they're doing it because of your leadership, but they're a different kind of person. More than likely, their what they call personality temperament is probably very different. And some friends that I know, their second child is a boy, and he's like 7 years old or something like that. And I don't think they've quite realized what it means that they have a rational child. And this is using David Keirsey's language of, rationals, guardians, and all this kind of stuff. But they're both guardians. And what a guardian is, just the general gist is they're a concrete person, the way that they think, and they're kind of cooperative. And so they're kind of generally preoccupied with kind of what are the rules, what are the standard ways of doing things, and whether or not you're in compliance with those standard rules and ways of being. A rational type is very different. A rational type is an abstract rather than concrete person, and they are a utility type. And so what you've got to realize about you may or may not be one of these types. For the people who are abstract, they're really going to understand this. For the concrete people, they're wondering, what in the hell am I talking about? But the abstract utility types, they're trying to do this like functional perfection. And so depending on kind of their maybe deeper kind of type to this, they're generally looking throughout the world and categorizing, classifying it, creating these orders. But the orders are beyond just, for example, you have a neat and tidy house. It might be things like the most optimal place to put a studio or an office within like a space. Like it's more abstract, to be blunt. And these parents and kids, the parents, I think by explaining to them that their kids are rational, they would kind of get it a little bit, but they really would not know how to handle this because their child, which they know, tells a lot of stories and is kind of floating off into la la land in their eyes. And they may be wholly unprepared for the fact that as that kid gets older, their ability, I think right now they don't realize that their child, they already know that their kid tells like, fanciful stories. And so they can detect them like, aha, yeah, I got it. But what they don't realize is because guardian types, they can't really see around the corner. And what happens next is like their knowledge. Let me see, kind of watch myself here. Their knowledge over time of the kid is going to be moving at maybe like, this trajectory here. But like the trajectory of that kid's knowledge is going to go like that. And at some point in time, that kid will be able to tell lies that their parents will have no ability to actually detect. Every rational I've ever met in my life has that ability. Whether or not they use it has to do with a lot with their background, but at some point, and it definitely comes around in their childhood, they gain this ability to, this finesse to tell lies and great lies that people believe. It's a very interesting thing because once they realize what you know, they know how to walk around that. And the other types, they're not positioning themselves to continually to be in front. They're just really not. They're just going about their business, and they're expecting their kid to be some certain kind of way. They've already outgrown them, and then there they are. And so, I'm not here really to talk about this in detail, but just to give you like just a micro example of how complicated it is to actually lead kids. And what I've seen, and this is my view of children, they're, at least from 8 and below that I've seen, they are borderline animals. They have impulse control is relatively low. And for some of them, again, based on this temperament, it could be really low. They like to, some of them like to just fire off internal thoughts regardless of the impact of anybody, and they're just totally unaware that it has any impact. And they can be told like, "Hey, that has an impact on other people, and you shouldn't do that." And like, okay, and then within 15 seconds of saying that, they went and did it again. It's very it's interesting. So, how do you lead something like this? How do you lead someone? Maybe I should say someone. How do you lead someone who knows you perhaps better than you do? How do you lead someone that is watching you in times where you don't even realize you're being watched? We're talking these creatures that, will they'll do stuff like hop in your bed in the middle of the night or early in the morning. We're talking about, critters in your house that might do stuff like, put their ear to the wall so they can listen to what you're talking about and have no qualms about doing it. How do you lead? How do you lead such in a difficult environment? And I think one of the biggest salient things that I could say to this, especially if you struggle with it or you're you're foreseeing that trajectory move where all of a sudden they are surpassing you. How do you do it? One of the things that I highly, highly recommend that you may or may not be doing already is you need to employ your spouse to be your tightest informant. You and your spouse, you should be so intertwined that not only do you have absolutely unfiltered conversations, but you should also be strategizing and unfurling tactics with them. So in the military sense, you might be doing a pincer movement, right? So the kid's here, and I mean this in an abstraction. It could be in the physical world. Physical world makes sense too, but also in an abstraction. Ideas of how do you go about education? How do you go about learning? You could do things like a pincer move. You come from both sides. People talk about things like good cop, bad cop. That's another possibility that you can do. The general gist is your kids, without with your spouse's help, you're going to have a lot of coverage. Now, if you have many kids like I do, it gets even more complicated. I have 4 kids. I know I think a friend of ours just had a 6th kid. Some other friends we have 2 kids. Another one has 3 kids. And I've kind of seen it. There's a bunch of different dynamics. I don't know anybody who has... No, I do. I know somebody who has 1 kid. I have not got to watch them quite like I would, but it's pretty much as I would expect that if you have 2 parents on 1 kid, you've got a lot of coverage. And so that's why these single children are often spoiled. On one hand, it could be spoiled. On another hand, they can be lifted up into adults rather quickly. I've seen my 8-year-old. I've seen this pattern where people's firstborn kids, they have more in common with their parents than they seemingly do with the rest of the kids. And that's kind of seemingly regardless of age. My 8-year-old tries to hang around with the adults all the time, and she'll just be like a fly on the wall while all the parents and adults are talking in the room. It's like, dude, get out of here. Bye-bye. Go be a kid now. And so she's trying to, you can almost think that she's identifies with being an adult, and she's clearly not an adult. It's just super funny when her name's Julia. Whenever Julia will attempt to talk about a subject that's like an adult subject or something, and I say adult subject, it's something like kids don't care about this kind of stuff whatsoever. It could be like politics, for example. Kids don't like politics. maybe the few who got imbued from a parent or somebody that they know. But in general, kids don't care for politics. That's like just not a thing. Looking on here to see if there's any questions or comments. Let's see. Okay. All right, I got my chat up. But when somebody like that, like when Julia will start to try to talk about it, it's like very quickly, you got to do the close the eyes and just be like, please stop. You're not adding anything to the conversation. What's happening here in this conversation is this person, this person, this person, this person. We're all building off of what we're saying, and we're creating this mosaic of knowledge and information and experiences. That's what's happening with this exchange. And here comes this little kid, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, blah blah blah." It's like, no, you don't even know about what this topic is. In politics, you might turn to them and say, point to China on a map. China, one of the biggest countries in the world. Point to China on a map. That's what I thought. You can't. So this is what we're leading here. And use your spouse. Here's another tip. This is one of the most underrated tips. I say underrated, either unknown or unutilized, something to that effect. And it's to, how do I describe it? What some people do is they'll get down. They'll get on like one knee, and then they'll get to like eye to eye with their kid. So they're like talking to them. That's a start to what I'm saying. What you do is you get on their level. You suspend being a parent for 2 seconds, like that concept of being a parent. I set the rules. You're going to do that, and you get down on their level. What you can do. This is how to influence a kid very directly. Is for one, you got to clear their attention. They might be trying to continually turn away from you and look at something, just like nope. Just put like your arm around the side of their head to try to do like a little blinder. Say like, hey, right here. And once they start looking, you have a conversation with them. And I mean a conversation. I mean, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. They always say, I don't know. Like, no, like, tell me what's happening. And then they'll start talking to you. And the mode that you're hopping into, you might call it more like coach mode. And what that mode does, why it's there, is you get the opportunity to actually hop into their world. And you get to know more than just kind of surface level information about what's happening around them. And this is like a very, very powerful way to communicate. You could do it to just about anybody, but to do it with the kid, which again, they have the least amount of defenses to this kind of this influencing tactics as it is. And so what you do is you're hopping in and you're allowing them to let you be their offload processing. So they just can start spouting off at you and just throwing all these things, and you're just listening. And as a trusted adult, you can listen to what's going on, and you might ask them, you might need to cut them off and ask them, like, what do you want? What do you want is a super powerful statement. And I've come to find many people don't know what they want, especially until you ask them what they want. And all of a sudden, magically, they know what they want. They know what they want. And it requires some other person to go and kind of reach out and get it from them. But you ask them, okay, what do you want? And then they come back and then they tell you. You're like, okay. So that's like that's a question. And then you might go ask back and forth, like, what have you tried? I read this in a book on coaching recently. You might ask them, like, okay, what have you already done to try to get what you want? And they're going to tell you. They might have resistance to this. If this is the first time you've ever done this, they may or may not just immediately respond to. If you don't have this kind of connection with your kids, let's say familiar, you've done this before and you've talked to them and all this kind of stuff. If you haven't done that before, then this might be, a little bumpy. But if you do it enough times, what you're trying to do is you're eventually getting to the point where you have an unfettered communication stream where, again, like I said, you're kind of doing the offload processing power. And eventually, here's the thing that most parents totally get wrong. They just completely get this wrong. That's why I'm telling you, eventually, your kids will be willing to tell you the whole truth. Not just, I don't like what they're doing over there, please solve my problem. And I see a lot of parents dealing with that stuff. We rarely ever deal with that kind of stuff. Why? Because my kids have been able to been part of problem-solving conversations that are becoming ever more complex. My kids don't come to us to solve problems. They just don't. I mean, not really, not most of the time. Not only things like, especially, and what I mean is like interpersonal problems in particular. They don't. And because we talk to them pretty regularly. Another thing with this that some people have remarked that we'll do, at least I will do, is another thing that can help with this is like tell them like, hey, sit down on this chair, calm down, give them a hug or something. Okay, you give them a hug so that they know you care about them. Like this is kind of some of the easiest ways to influence the people who are closest to you. You give them a hug so they know you care, because no one hugs anyone who doesn't care about them. That's just not how it works. Okay, now they're starting to believe that that's the case, and you go like, oh, what's going on? Now you're asking a question about their situation, giving them an opportunity to talk, so you must care about them. You're building this, you might call it rapport, trust. You're showing them that you care about whatever the heck is going on. And that's the thing that opens up the floodgates. And then once they know that this is the case and they've opened it up, you can start to speak things into them and they will do them. They will actually listen to you because they know definitively that you have sought out what they want, what they're going towards, and you're yielding yourself over to help them get it. You may not be going out there and reaching it, going and taking it and grabbing it like that. That's not always the best thing to do. Sometimes it is. But you're helping them to go do it. It works every stinking time. And if you can get yourself around there to be able to do it, if you can get yourself into the behavior to go and do it, it'll work wonders for you. I've seen it with myself too many times. This is really all about, how do we parent better? How do we influence our kids better? How do we get them to be have greater developed character? How do we as parents get them to cast a vision for their own life and to progress towards something and or excellence? That's what parenting leadership is all about. You are trying to walk beside them, not lord over them. That's parenting, which I would really call parenting management. How to manage your kids, which is a thing. It matters. But this leadership is not management. And so therefore, you can't confuse like parenting. The typical way parenting is thought about is really management. And if management is not leadership, then the way you typically think of parenting can't possibly be leading your kids. It's managing your kids. And you could be a good manager of your kids and it may imbue them, but do not expect them necessarily to develop certain kinds of skills like building a vision, having good character, having the skills and ability to earn influence with other people, and then leading people. They don't necessarily gain those skills unless they see it happening, because they need a frame of reference. So as you go forward in your parenting, you can continue to point back to things, and you can say, "Hey, remember that time that we did that?" and then go, oh, that's what you're trying to do when you're leading your kids. That's kind of like a basic philosophy of what I think about it. With that, I wanted to move on to something a little different. I'm looking here on my iPad here. I wanted to talk about my favorite book on parenting. And I would say it's like a book on influencing kids. It's this book called, let me see if I could actually get it up. I might be able to do one of these numbers where, still working with this new system here. If I do this right here and then do this, it's not popping up. Okay. Let me go back down, display. Okay, now it's displaying. All right. The book is called How to Talk. Let's see. I think this is it right here. I realize I don't have it on my bookshelf. So this is the book right here. How to Talk to Kids So Kids Will Listen. Learn the most effective way to talk to kids so they will listen. You can see right here exactly what I was talking about. That this parent is actually down, looking eye level. They're at like kid height, and they're talking to the kid. Now it's funny because this, like any good nonfiction book, it's coming from the parent's perspective. Like, I want to know how to get my kids to listen, right? You might first ask the question, why should they listen to you? Well, I'm the parent. Okay, that's management. You say things like that. That's management. That's not leading, okay? Why should they listen to you? There's only one reason why they should listen to you. There's one daggum reason. Because you're the person who's going to help them get what they want. That's it. If you think it's something other than that, dude, you don't know. You are not leading anything. If your answer is something other than that, it's management. It's it's something else. This is like such a key aspect to leadership. It's not to say that you won't, in the aspect of leading a child or anyone in life, that you're not going to get them to do things that they don't want to do. In fact, I would say that might be 80% of the activity, maybe 20%, maybe it's 20%, somewhere between there, of getting other people to do things that they don't want to do, that they would not normally want to do. But the question is, why? Why would they do that? They're going to do that because you're proven without a shadow of a doubt that you can help them and that you will help them on what they're going to do. And I mean, with kids, oftentimes their problems are about that big, but to them it's gigantic. And so you ought to realize how easy it is for you to earn influence with this person who is right in front of you. So all these kids who are lost and don't have connections with their parents, boy, did they mess up. They had this opportunity, like free 18 years, to build like insane amount of influence with their children, and they just squandered it. They squandered it all the time. And you know why? I'll tell you why. They squandered it because they spent too much time trying to manage. Management, you don't have to... Effective management really is doing less and focusing on few things, not the many things. That's how to be effective at management. And I'm sure I could come up with a kind of a small list to help people out on what you should manage. It should be things like, here's the values. Here's the things that we always do. Here's all the things that we don't do. It's like boundaries. It's way general ways of behaving. Boundaries are a big one. But I'm going to move off this management to get back onto leadership. the thing with leadership is when you become an effective leader with somebody, you know what they want. You know what they want, and you can give it to them. And if you don't know what they want, you have lots of means of being able to figure it out. You might just ask them, what do you want? And they just will turn around and tell you. I want that group over there of my friends to let me play that video game and play the game that I want to play. That's what they want. That's literally what they will say out loud. Now, if you're managing, you're a parent, you're just going to be like, learn how to solve that. Solve it on your own. And they will. Those stuff like punch somebody or whine at people. They do this stuff all the time. All the time. Or you can do just like this, right? Just like this lady right here. You can sit down. Now, I started this because this is all about, again, this book. I love the title of this book. It's talking to the parent. It's talking to the parent. You can also write this, how to say things so that kids want to hear what you have to say. Now, the funny thing is with this as well, it's actually more than just the, let's see if they've got the, I don't think they've got the table of contents in here. Okay, here we go. Here's a few attributes we'll acquire. Recognizing common communication barriers, respecting boundaries, recognizing signs of stress or anxiety in kids. Tips for responding to kids' emotions, encouraging kids to express their feelings, respecting their privacy and personal space, encouraging brainstorming, developing a plan for constant discipline, strategies for developing empathy for kids, importance of independence and responsibility in child development, strategies for supporting emotional intelligence in kids, sustaining effective communication, communicating through play. Yeah, this is a pretty well marketed book. I'm not going to lie. Obviously, I bet somebody had to have helped them with this, but actually, let me go back real quick. Let's see here. This is like a brand new version of this. Oh no, this is the book right here. Oh yeah, no. This is the book. I totally got it wrong. Yeah, it's kind of annoying because I don't have this on my shelf. I can't just grab it. This is it. How to talk so kids will listen, and listen so kids will talk. See, this is a better title in my opinion because it's that two aspects to it, and not just the myopic view of the managing parent. This is actually it right here. How to talk so kids will listen, and listen so kids will talk. This book is a great book. Let's see if it's got the, it does have this. This is an older book. The other one, I guess it's new. Helping children deal with their feelings. Note how that is the first page. I say things all the time like, I give a hint, sprinkle a little hint here. Frustrations, people's frustrations, just murder them. And the question is whether or not you can distance yourself from their emotions enough to be able to recognize the frustration and be able to take it off them. Engaging cooperation, alternatives to punishment, encouraging autonomy, praise. Oh man, yeah, that's such a good one. Freeing children from playing roles, putting it all together. Yeah, this is a great book. Let me see if it's got some things that can kind of prompt me on some. Oh yeah. I love this. They have all these conversations back and forth, and they're totally realistic. Here's child, "Mommy, I'm tired." Then the parent, "You couldn't be tired. You just napped." Oh my God. Sorry. I gotta laugh because let's just break this down technically. Okay, a kid is saying something. Again, we people here who can understand what we're saying now, we are the more aware ones. Okay, the child, they make a statement. And the reality is you do not know what they're saying. You don't know what they're saying. And so the second sentence here that they're saying is, "You couldn't be tired." You're telling them you don't know what you're talking about. You just napped. it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous to ever say something like that. Do you know what? You know why that's so ridiculous? How could you possibly know if they're tired? How could you know if they're tired? You're not them. Maybe they're like super sick and they're just like constantly tired or something. Just to make a statement like that, what you're doing is you're just cutting off any chance to know what the hell is going on. All right, let's read the rest here. Okay. Whoa. It's flying all over the place. Okay. The child, louder, but I'm tired. You're not tired. You're just a little sleepy. Let's get dressed. And now the kid's wailing. No, I'm tired. It's so funny. It's so true. Mommy, it's hot in here. The parent, it's cold. Keep your sweater on. The child, no, I'm hot. And then the parent, I said keep your sweater on. No, I'm hot. Again, are you getting the picture yet? This is management. This is what management looks like. They're trying to set these parameters. The kid's going outside the parameters and saying, no, you're wrong. Hop back in. I'm trying to control everything. We're out and it's cold. It must be cold. You must believe it's cold. Dude, what are you doing? What you are actually doing is you're explaining in all of yourself that you're fucking crazy. You're crazy. Like the way you think about a child it's not real. It is all in your imagination, the belief about what's happening. In both of these situations that they described here, the parent has no idea what the hell they're saying. They're saying one statement and what the parent is doing every time. Let me tell you, again, let's talk about these exact statements. What the parent is doing every time is they're fencing with them. They're parlaying. They're parrying. They're saying that they think the parent is thinking that the kid is saying yes, and then they're saying no. Yes, no. Yes, no. Dude, that's a conflict. And so then parents get exhausted and they're frustrated, like, oh my God, these kids are driving me crazy. Well, of course they're driving you crazy. You are causing conflict. If they say yes and you say no, that is called conflict. If they say blue and you say it's red, that is conflict. That's not leading. It's just not leading. You might need to do conflict in order to lead, but not this. This is what people are doing when they're not thinking at all. They're just reacting, and they're reacting with, no, my kid is dumb. All right, let's see what we got here. Can you see what's happening? Not only were all the conversations turning into arguments. Yes. I was also telling my children over and over again not to trust their own perceptions, but to rely on mine instead. Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, I got to go read this book again. Just because I absolutely love it. Look at that. Your friend tries to help you in 8 different ways as you read each response. Your gut reaction, denial of feelings, philosophical response, advice, questions, defense of other person, pity, amateur psychoanalysis, an empathic response. Yeah, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you actually in their own shoes about feelings. Long story short, this book is a phenomenal book. Now that I think about it, after I get off here, I'm going to go purchase another copy. I mean, it should be somewhere in my house, but when I went to go get more of the books to fill up my library here, I couldn't find this book, and will bring about more cooperation from children than all the yelling and pleading in the world. Oh my goodness, pleading. I'll tell you right now, look, I'm going to say something that, not controversial. It shouldn't be controversial. And all the parents out there, to not create some sort of friction between us, don't plead with your kids. It is the worst thing you could possibly do. Well, maybe it's not the worst, but it's bad. Don't plead with your kids. Why plead? You don't need to plead. Why would you grovel? Oh, please, master, who's so much smaller than me? I mean, it's ridiculous. You don't need to plead. You just don't. You actually need to lead. If you lead, you can do stuff like go to bed. And they're going to go to bed. They're not going to fight you over it. They could go to bed. You could tell them to go to bed when they're not tired. They'll go to bed. But you got to gain that influence. You got to earn that influence. You got to do stuff like that other picture, which I don't know anything about that book. It might be a good book. But this is a good book. Go ahead and pick it up. Last thing I want to do here is I want to do a quote. Let me see if I can pull it up on my thing here. It should be this. There we are. Okay. So this is a quote that I would say about parenting that I pulled from the Bible, Proverbs 13:24. He who withholds his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him diligently. This was said by King Solomon in the Proverbs. And this is one of these things that, of course, there's another kind of phrase that you hear out there, which is spare the rod, spoil the child. I don't even know where that came from, but that's what this is trying to say. And as parents, to have a lot of empathy for all the parents that are out there sometimes is really hard. In fact, the reason why, at least one of the reasons why this proverb is there, is because we want to do the opposite. We believe by loving our child, we would withhold our rod, i.e., are making it very well known to them that we are displeased with them. That is not loving your kids. That is the belief that we have. We don't want to do it. No parent really likes to do it. During the times in which people go overboard, the parents they don't have the skills that I'm talking about here, and then what that buck does, and they just get so frustrated and they go and they explode, and it doesn't feel like love. It feels like hate, and so you would come across something like this and you would think the opposite. But the reality is if you love your kids, you have to discipline them. And you have to do it, as I say, diligently. If you do it regularly, you don't have to take it to the highest, most ridiculous levels, like, whacking them with a staff or something. But if you do not correct them and show them the way, you hate your child. You hate them. And you will continue to hate them. And the funny thing about it is, if you can feel it, because I've seen it in people where they feel like they should be doing something and they don't, and they gain this great tension. They know that it must be how do I describe this? It wasn't quite like that. It's they know that what they're doing would be indication that they hate their kids, but they're doing it anyways, and they feel bad about it. They don't want to do it, but they're just like overwhelmed. I know I'm definitely speaking to some parents on that one. And they know that if they were to, unleash the fury on them, that they don't like themselves after it for that. And the reason is because they don't feel like it's love. And I'm not saying that it necessarily is. Maybe some extent to that is, some of it is actually love. I've heard Jordan Peterson, you may or may not have heard of him before. He's kind of this famous on YouTuber, who talks about all sorts of different stuff, a lot of philosophy type things. And he talked about kids, and he was a psychologist and stuff like this. And one of the things he talked about was like the studies that show that kids who are improperly socialized by the age of, I think it was like 3 or 5, is really young. Maybe it was 5. They're improperly socialized. They have an extremely high chance of being deviant and having poor relationships throughout their entire life. And what was super crazy about it was kind of why. And the reason why is at that young age, if the parent does not provide discipline and show them the way, the child is bumbling throughout life. They're going through all this randomness because they're not getting the feedback they need to start kind of moving in an orderly type path. I don't mean like an oppressed type path, but knowing the ways to be successful, they don't know those things. And so here's what's crazy. Their peers will actually attack them, and attack them in the sense of they will do what the parents are doing, but they will not do it out of love. They will do it out of just pure hate. Just do it out of hate because they don't really have the skills to basically manage it. Like I said at the beginning, they're kind of more like animals. You get them in that thing. They're not like trying to correct them out of love. They're trying to correct them out of like, dude, you need to get out of here. Whack. And then everybody goes, oh, why'd you do that? Why'd you hit that kid? And it's like, dude, that other kid is freaking crazy. And of course, if you're going to do things like get on eye level with your kids and you talk to them without judgment, you're going to find out like, oh man, that kid, ooh, maybe we need to like not put him around or something like that. But not only do all the kids or all their peer group will no longer provide that, they can't get any good signals from their peer group. The parents, any parents that are around will actually just do things like smile at them and just be like, hey, not really good time now. Which I know I have definitely done before. I'm to other people's kids where it's just like, hi, I'm not really gonna have a real conversation with you. I'm not to the point where I'm gonna put on a fake smile. I'm not that kind of person, but people will do it. They will avoid that kid and they'll smile. Now you got to think. So this is what Jordan Peterson brought up, that all the people they've ever interacted with in their young life either were extremely hateful to them or they were clearly lying through their teeth to their face. All the parents are liars and all the kids are bad. Ooh, that's a rough environment. And so this is the great warning of you need to properly socialize your kids when they're young. That's fine, but this is really the way to think about it here. You know, he who withholds his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him diligently. Proverbs 13:24 by King Solomon. Well, I think that's it for this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to see your comments and your questions. I'm going to start doing this very regularly. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about your comments and parenting. Put that down below. All the typical YouTube stuff. I definitely recommend subscribing. That's one of these things that if you don't realize this, like your feed, like the way the YouTube feed works, you're going to get more of the things that you want if you work with it. It's just one of these things. It tries to start guessing and throwing darts at you, which, hey, you might have come across this from that happening. But if you hit subscribe, not only is it going to say, okay, it's going to help my channel, and you're going to see these videos as they get posted up. They may not even be brand new. They might have been one of these kind of older ones. But then they will actually show you other kind of similar videos that YouTube's ranked that they're similar. So I guess with that, I got to leave you with my message, and my message, as always, is going to be with you, is going to be the leader, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Bye-bye.